Welcome to the Build with Boundaries podcast. My name is Manaz, and this podcast is for high achieving women looking to grow without sacrificing family and life. Discover what's missing and making you frustrated, and what's most important for you to achieve the success that you truly desire. All this without compromising the most important things in your life: your time, your family, your values, and your aspirations. So let's dive into today's topic.
Welcome everyone. I'm so excited to have Gennye with me today, and we're talking about love your self-care boundaries, such an important topic, and I'm really excited to hear all about Gennye's journey because I know she has so much to share. Welcome Gennye. Please say hello and tell the listeners who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be speaking to you. So I'm Gennye Lyon, Rainbow Anderzon. I am a business mentor for spiritual entrepreneurs. I'm a healer as well. So I do a lot of energy work, subconsciously, but not subconsciously, but with people's subconscious mind, and also their trauma healing and things like that, so that they can step into a better version of themselves, I suppose. So typically work with entrepreneurs, leaders, and people who, run businesses.
Amazing.
So that's me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's great. So tell me how you came to doing what you're doing now, because, it's quite specific in terms of trauma and, healing and helping them to heal. So tell me a bit more about how you discovered that.
Yeah. So I started out on the holistic journey, if you like, when I was in my 20s. And then, I finished university, I finished school, I did marketing and sociology, actually. But then I traveled the world and I decided I knew I had very sort of intuitive gifts. So I wanted to work with people. I came across doing body work and massage and things like that. So I started with that. Then I learned to become a counselor. And then I moved from doing like the one-on-one sessions to online, becoming a coach and a mentor. I did all my energy healing and soul contracts, work, all the things the tools that I use now. I did that about 15 years ago. So since then, I've been just continuing. And I always had the interest in the well-being, really. So body, mind, and soul. I have a nutrition certification as well. So it's like I was always interested in the body, mind, and spirit. So it's just worked from there, really. I used to work with the public, and now I work more with entrepreneurs, leaders, and business owners. So that's where I am with it. Yeah.
Great. So all round holistic beginning and lots of different ways.
I started out there, being a massage therapist for like 20 years. I really got to know the body. And actually, funnily enough, one of my frameworks that I work with now is the 7 levels of embodied leadership, because I learned so much from working with the body of people, and I realized that our bodies really is our, is the vessel for everything we do. So if we're not looking after it, we can't do as well as we think we can, probably, and then we are, what's the word? It's like you're compromising, really, on your performance.
That makes sense. And so tell me then, have you always understood, I mean, we all have that idea, don't we, that, well, self-care is good for us. And, have you always had that? Did something happen that made you think more so that this is something that I need to do more of?
Well, do you know what? Before I had children, self-care was just a part of my life, So I loved cooking, making nice food, nutrition, exercise, like having massages myself, go on self-development courses, and really learning, releasing my trauma, all those things were quite important. But as soon as you have children, it's like, it's like a curveball, isn't it? It's like, okay, so it's a curveball. So basically, I think intentionally, my self-care had to be more planned and, structured when I had children, because there was less time for me.
Yeah.
So I think having the background that I have, it wasn't that hard to implement it because I was already very good at it. But having children throws the curveball, so you kind of forget yourself for a while because you're like, whoa. And then also depending on, how your babies are when they are babies, it's just difficult, isn't it, to figure out everything because you don't have a handbook. So, but I can see how people who never really, they were probably okay, but if they didn't have the self-care as a first priority before they had children, I can see how that really goes out the window because you're kind of not used to doing that, or you're kind of not, you're just all of a sudden you feel completely depleted and you're thinking, gosh, I don't know what, I probably feel like this because I haven't done anything myself for the last 6 months.
Yeah. Gosh,
I think it's more like an effect, cause and effect,
Yeah, you make such a good point though there, Gennye, because I think the first thing that happens when life gets extra complicated, whether that's children or anything else, is that we end up having less time for ourselves. And the first thing to get off our to-do list or priorities tends to be the self-care. It's like the easy one to, oh, well, I didn't have time today. And actually that's when you need it the most, right? Because, getting through those difficult times, we have to take responsibility for our own well-being. And the way we can do that is by managing our own self-care and just understanding the importance and keeping it as a priority, because that's actually really hard work, isn't it, to make it a priority.
I think it's a cause and effect a lot, because people go, I didn't have lunch today. Because I was busy with the baby, or I was busy with the kids, so I was, running in and out through meetings, and there was only 5 minutes in between. I had to go to the toilet. And this is very sort of, maybe I'm being unfair now to say that, but I can see how people slip into that sort of lack of self-care because they kind of didn't make a priority just by default. It was just didn't happen.
It is hard.
Like no one's fault. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't put yourself there.
No.
If you had a choice, you wouldn't do it. And then it's only when people are starting feeling really drained, they are pouring from an empty cup, they feel snappy and stressed, like they don't know how to prioritize anymore. It's because the self-care is gone, usually. Yeah.
So tell me then, when life got complicated, what was like the difficult times for you? Because, you've mentioned one is just having children, right? Because just having
that's
them,
a big one. Yeah.
That's a big one. But were there moments in your life where it been like even more so important that you had?
So when I had my son, I had a really difficult birth. So I also had an operation at birth. Like I had a C-section emergency, and then I also had an operation at the same time. So my body, I didn't know this at the time, but apparently adrenal burnout, you can get that from like an intense trauma to the body. Right. So, adrenal burnout can be over time, you're really pushing yourself for too long, you're not resting enough, and, people get this fatigue, it's like adrenal fatigue. I didn't know this from before, that you could have this shock to your system, like your glands, basically, through a traumatic event, which is what happened to me. So through the traumatic birth and the traumatic surgery that I had, it was simply too much for my body at the time, and my adrenals burnt out there and then. I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. So I could not recover. It was really difficult. I recovered from the actual operation as such as like the skin was healing, but I couldn't recover emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I didn't know why. So it was just really odd. What happened, at the time then, I also had, we don't need to talk about that this time, but like I had also a spiritual upgrade at the same time. It was just a really intense time. But I think that was just a reflection of the physical stretch that I went through. So I just couldn't, it's like I was a shell, on myself. So I
Right.
couldn't really make decisions. It was like the light was on, but no one was in. I couldn't take my daughter to school for 6 months.
Wow.
So I couldn't get up and about in the day with my son. So my son was obviously with me, like he was a baby. I was with him all the time. So it wasn't, I suppose, I didn't feel like I was neglecting him or anything. It was just like I was just completely broken. I wouldn't get up and about properly in the day until about 10 o'clock. I couldn't even get dressed before 9. So, and that was going for 6 months.
And how did you recognize that was like there's something
Well,
more
in the beginning,
here?
the first sort of, I suppose, the first 2 months, it's like birth and, breastfeeding and those kind of things. But when I didn't get emotionally, physically, well, I kind of got physically better because it wasn't, I was healing, the skin was healing, I could get myself up and everything. But emotionally, psychologically, I was not healing at all. Getting worse. So at the time, like I was so I had to delegate. So it was almost like we had a nanny, we had a cleaner. My husband was really helpful. My mother-in-law would come around lots. I had friends. I had lots and lots of support. And I was just about functioning. It was like really weird. So at the time as well, then I was then forced to be like, okay, I have to go to bed at this time of the day. I have to have a nap. I also was doing that with him. I was forced to do this self-care.
Okay.
So it wasn't like I didn't do it before that, but it was almost like I had to create a really strict routine of self-care to even just function. And then I had a lot of I had acupuncture and I had like nutrition wise, I was, figuring out what I needed to support my body. I had also something called a hair analysis program that I started, which was designed to heal my burnout, help me with the glands and everything. It took me actually, so I got a lot better straight away actually when I started that. So that was the part of my self-care. And then I had like healing and other things that I, massage now and then and things like that when I felt like having it. And I carried on working really on my physical body and emotions and psychologically as well. And then I got better, and this nutritional program with the hair analysis actually healed the adrenal burnout. But it took 2 years. Yeah, so it took 2 years. But I was getting better quite quickly when I started it because I was then getting the right supplements to just to level everything out. And then, so my thyroid was also completely just part of the gland was just completely gone. But I mean, everything is absolutely fine now. This is now, my son's going to be 10 this year. So it's like over 10 years ago. It was 10 years ago. But no, I had no choice. I had no choice. I had to heal myself.
Yeah, your body said no. Basically, your body was saying no.
Yeah. And I couldn't figure out why. I only learned then through this nutritional program that I was doing with a hair analysis that, you can have an adrenal burnout from physical shock to the body.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's when you...
Quite interesting. I didn't know before. No.
You wouldn't know, would you, until these things...
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah, that's so
No.
hard. And then that's when you discovered that that's what you had been through and that made sense.
Yes, so exactly. So then I started to establish it was almost like I had to establish really clear boundaries of how much I'm available for, how much capacity do I have right now,
Yeah.
and how can I communicate that in the right way so that I don't have an argument with my people around me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, like,
exactly. Well, this is it. That was my next question, really.
Yeah.
How you would have started on that journey of, right, I definitely need to get a lot more self-care. Like, I need to be very strict with it. I know I need to rest during the day. I need to get up at a certain time. Whatever that looked like for you, obviously you had no choice because it was so intense.
It was so intense, exactly.
But for a lot of other people, it's not that intensity would just force you to stop. And who wants to stop? Like, nobody. We all have things that we have commitments and dependence, and we don't want to be compromising on doing our best for that. So if you could share more about where you started with this kind of creating your boundaries with your loved ones, because you obviously yourself, you had a young family. There's just so many, so much stress, I guess. Like, also knowing and being aware that you can't do things, that must have been really stressful for you. So how
Yes.
did you handle all of that?
Yes, I think when it was really bad, everyone was really supportive because, like, my husband and my children, look, I wasn't not functioning. I was getting up, but I don't think the children really was that aware in a way because, like, I didn't complain in front of them, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But my husband knew and my mother-in-law knew. So I think that was never a conversation of, I need this. They were like, what do you need? But then when I got better, it was so ingrained in them that I needed my self-care that I didn't have to have a conversation of, I need this to look after myself. I just did it. And then with the children, I suppose, I still have this conversation with them. They're like, they can be pushing for things. And I'm like, I need this hour for me now. I can't do more things for you. I've done this and this and this for you today. So I kind of remind them of what I have done already. And that's the conversation now. My husband, we don't have this conversation anymore because we both give each other that time for self-care because we know how important it is. So it's actually more with the children. So I point out what they had already and said, you've had this, you've had this, you've had this. This is what we've done. Now I'm going to have this. And they're like, oh yeah. So you have, because the thing is with kids, they forget what they've already had because they just do.
Yeah.
So I would say for example, if my daughter says, this is a really good way of doing it to small children as well. So I would say, well, we've already went shopping for this particular thing you wanted, and I've taken you to the drama, and I've done your hair. Like, I have done things for you, and we've been talking as well about how you're feeling and stuff. Now I have no more space. It's done. You have to go now and do your own thing. Like, literally. So I'll just say it. And she's like, oh yeah. So I think reminding kids what they've had and then say, I now need that for me. They can't really argue with that.
Yeah. It's
So
hard,
I think that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah, it's hard because...
And if like knowing then in your, so the way I measure it is if there is not then another demand or another question or another request, inquiry, whatever it is, if I feel that I'm starting to take a deep breath and I'm like, that's too much, then I just know my body's basically telling me you are of capacity. You don't want to do that right now. It doesn't feel good in my body to say yes to that. But therefore, I'm now going to communicate with my children in a way that say, I'm at capacity. I have no space for that.
I love how you described that, Gennye, because I think what happens in mum life, right? And then when you have added business duties and responsibilities, it's just like adding all these layers on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
like knowing and just being aware of what place you need to be in order for you to say, right, that's it. And you've described it so well. It's almost like we have to create a cue for ourselves.
Yeah.
And
you need to have a signal.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand what is our signal, because it might not be the same for everyone.
No, with different things, yeah.
Different things. And it might be like as simple as what you said, where you take a deep breath because your body's already telling you it needs to prepare for something because it's not enjoying the experience. Listening to that and just saying, I'm going to listen to my body.
And it literally is that. So for those who are listening now to this episode, I really recommend that you find your own signal, which is basically saying, I'm at capacity.
Yeah.
Whether that is taking that deep breath or feeling maybe a bit of anxiety. Some people feel anxiety. Some people start getting a small headache. You know what I mean? Okay. There might be some physical sort of symptoms. That you just have to know yourself, sort of thing.
Totally.
And then you just need to find a way of communicating that so that it doesn't feel like you're rejecting, especially if it's children, because this is the thing with children, they don't have boundaries. They will just take because that's what they do, and it's not because they're selfish. Well, I suppose they're all self-centered because they're not adults yet. So it's our responsibility to then give them those boundaries or how much is available to them.
And that's another great point. We're teaching them. They can see practically how we are teaching them to build their own boundaries, because ultimately they're learning through.
We don't want them to overstretch as adults. Yeah.
And they're still in that learning phase. This is super helpful, Gennye. I think anybody listening will resonate with those moments where you just feel like that, oh my goodness, inside.
Exactly.
It's that finding that signal is such a great piece of advice. So what would you say then, if somebody really struggled with setting any other self-care boundaries? For example, they need to, it might not be children, but they need to create space for having a self-care routine, for example. What would you say to them to help them to see that is something that they need to prioritize, I guess, isn't it, ultimately?
Do you know, this is so important because these are, like, most people are living out like learned habits, Yeah. So it's like anything else. When you want to change a habit or change your way of being, you just got to accept that there's going to be a bit bumpy in the beginning because you're changing something. You are, you're showing up differently. So it's gonna create some sort of ripples. And if people can just say, okay, I give myself this amount of time, or I give myself a few months to change these patterns because I need them for me, or I need this to change for me. And I have to kind of take the rough with the smooth. And then just prepare yourself for that. Because what often happens is when you set new boundaries, especially with family, loved ones, children, partner, husband, wife, could be the other way around as well, elderly parents, whatever. When you start changing your boundaries, there's normally like a protest, Because they're like, hang on a minute, why is the rules changing all of a sudden?
Right. Yeah.
And that's like for the person for the people listening now here, to identify yourself as, yes, okay, it's changing, but you're doing it for the right reason for everyone, really. And if they can't see it just yet, they will see it in time. So you kind of have to just take that rough with the smooth and just say, okay, well, I will have some protest maybe, but I'll have to just stand my ground, really. And just say, right, I need this. And if you don't like it, I'm really sorry that you don't like it, but I can't do anything about how you feel about it. Sorry.
Yeah. We can't, can we?
So it's just that. So I think in the beginning, this was before I had my son. I did have conversations about boundaries before that with my husband, but they were not too bad. It was just a little bit bumpy about around a few things. He was very sort of flexible usually, but there was conversations, and I could feel like, oh God, I'm changing the structure here, how we are normally functioning, but I need to do it, like, for me.
I think it's understanding that because it's a habit for us to change those things, it's a habit for them, for what we had created previously. So,
Yes.
Actually what you've said there, what I'm thinking is, like, we need to be more expecting that there's the bumpy bits coming. And when we
Yes.
expect that, it's not like, oh my goodness, it's a shock, it didn't work, right? That's it.
Yeah.
Give
No.
up.
It's just a
It's
bump.
like
Yeah.
we know there's a bump coming, and so
Yeah.
we can therefore change our mindset around that and almost
Around the bump, yeah.
expect it, and we need to get over that. We need to get over that because, well, we need to understand why we're doing it, and that's all.
And it's going to be okay. So people get used. So when you change your boundaries and change the way you're saying no, really, to things that are overcapacity. That's really what you're doing.
Yes, exactly.
That's really what it is. People get used to it.
Totally.
They get used to it eventually.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it could be things like, look, this is just a personal snapshot, I still do most of the washing, and I will put it in piles, and the people in my household will put it away in their drawers. Sometimes, like, I don't sort of mind, it's kind of a little bit therapy for me, so one of the things that I do that I don't mind doing, sort of thing. But sometimes I'm like, I am at capacity. Can everyone come and sort their clothes out, please? Yeah. And so my son, maybe he's 9, well, it could be 10 just now soon. My husband will, and my daughter will, but he's so independent.
There's
He's
always
not,
one.
I can't find the other dog. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, you can try. So it's like they know I have said to them, I don't mind doing it. It's a part of our experience, but when I do need you to do it, you need to do it. And I think being flexible around that, things like tidying up around the house, they do all their own things, but sometimes I'm like, look, I said to my daughter, you can empty dishwasher now. She's like, well, I've got this. I was like, well, you can do it. You've got time to do that 2 or 3 times a week. You can do that. And that's just like little things, isn't it? But it's just having those conversations so that they know that.
Totally. And I think sometimes it is small things, isn't it? And those small things then add up. But when we take care of all of the small things, it can just be like, oh my goodness. And if you're already at capacity, then boy, are you feeling it. I love that. I think that's really, really helpful. Yeah. So what would you say, Gennye, could you share 3 tips on how somebody could get started? Because they might be in the place where they're like, I don't know even where to begin. Like, what would I do? What would my personal boundaries look like? What does that mean? Could you share 3 tips so that they can get started? Because the whole point is, like, until they don't take that action, they're just never going to benefit.
Exactly. So step 1 is always to create space for yourself. Whether that is that you are going, my head is so full, I don't even know what to do. I think I'm going to explode. Do the opposite then. Don't go and do things. This is very hard, but that's step 1. Go and sit with yourself, do some deep breathing, do a meditation. Like, you can listen to guided meditations on YouTube. I have free ones as well. Do a meditation, just relax your mind, then start writing things down, maybe in your journal, sort of dumping how you're feeling. When we create space, we access divine guidance as what we are meant to be doing, and it kind of bypasses the head. So we're getting sort of information of what we were meant to be doing to resolve the situation from our intuition, which bypasses the mind and which is always right. But we can't access that piece of information if our head is full. So create space is step 1. Step 2 would be to do what you said you were going to do. If you said, okay, well, I'm going to do a meditation every day now for 10 minutes, and I'm going to do 1 hour a week where I'm doing something for me. Well, schedule it in then. Do what you said you were going to do. Don't just like, oh, we'll be all right, because then you then you are like, crossing your own boundaries.
We're slipping away, aren't we?
It was slipping. So say what you said we were going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say third one is give yourself praise for all the small steps, because I think to create new boundaries and a completely new way of being in the family and everything else, it takes a little bit of time. So like it's going to take some time if you're really down the hole of having very little boundaries, and it's just, or you might be doing okay, but you're just feeling like you're so stretched in so many directions that you don't even know where to start. Just start slowly with one thing at a time. Also, when you sit and have this stillness and space, I really recommend to write down what you want. What do you define as? What is it that you want? Like, what do you need to delegate, or what do you not want to do? Because some things you're going to be like, I don't want to do that, but you're still doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, don't stop. And think of things like what comes to me. It's like elderly parents. All right, so you're not going to want to stop to see them if they're in an elderly home, but how often can you actually practically go? Can you ring? Like, do you know what I mean? Can you make it a little bit easier for yourself?
Yeah. We don't look at options. If we just say we're doing this, it's like we're creating more friction with our own self that nobody else can see.
No.
And it doesn't serve us, because we just ignore that inside like voice.
Exactly. And you're probably really hard on. A lot of women are just hard on themselves, aren't they? Just women generally, I feel. True. I'm not saying, but feel that a lot of women are hard on themselves because they kind of give themselves such hard time when they haven't, been there for that person at that time, that many times.
That one time, yeah.
But why should you be like, well, give yourself a bit of slack?
I love that. Those are all so great, and I love that last one.
They're fine.
That's step by step, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a step by step, and actually acknowledging that you are moving. Like, that's the main thing. It's not about how quickly you're going, but if you are doing it and you are committing to yourself that you are important, that really is what you're celebrating.
Exactly. And all the small steps are like progress, And that is so important, because when we don't give ourselves sort of pat on the shoulder, it feels heavy, doesn't it?
It does.
Energetically, it doesn't feel like we're doing something good.
Absolutely.
So it's really about give yourself, wow, I've done that today. Amazing. Like, great. I feel so good, and I'm so grateful for all the support and all the things that I put in place. Like, you see it from that sort of point of view.
Exactly.
And then you can just build on that,
Totally.
keep building on it.
Exactly. And that's the only way we're going to see the benefit, is when we take those small steps. So my last question now, we've talked a lot about boundaries in this episode, but regardless, I'm still asking you this question. What does building your business with boundaries mean to you, Gennye?
So that means many things, actually. Only saying yes to an energizing clients.
Right. Love that.
Because any clients that makes me feel drained, like it was in the past by mistake. It's like default again. It wasn't.
Yeah.
And it particularly didn't sort of made that clear. So I have amazing energizing clients now. Like, I have had it for a long time. It feels good. The next thing is like have boundaries on your phone, and how much you would message people after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or whatever time you want to put your boundary. Give yourself the rules. So, for example, I sometimes do message clients after 7, but it's because I'm chilling, and it might be like a fun conversation. Do you know what I mean? It's not a conversation of, oh wow, it's all heavy and strange. It's like, oh yeah, amazing, congratulations, or they signed a new client, or they had a breakthrough or something. Do you know what I mean? So I'm quite
Yeah.
happy
Yeah.
to respond if I'm on my phone. If
Yeah.
not, I'm also okay if I didn't respond, because like no
Yeah.
one would expect me to respond really after sort of 6, I think.
Yes.
So it's like
Absolutely.
decide what your boundaries are like that. I would also say boundaries with payments and things like that. Strict boundaries, how you want people to pay you and on time, and don't deliver and things like that, if it's not cleared up financially, like,
Yeah.
don't sort of over deliver. I would be very sort of say, look, what are you available for there? Things like clarity calls, how long are you available for? If it's somebody if it's somebody very aligned and maybe you've had conversations in Messenger or on LinkedIn already and they feel really aligned and they really want to sign up and it's a aligned client, then you'd have a long conversation. If somebody's just kind of, I don't know, picking you up and go, hey, I love this, can we have a call? And then you're like sitting there talking and you're thinking,
Right.
no, then you need to know how to say that's enough.
Yeah.
Like, be like, no, I can feel this conversation not going anywhere. We need to stop conversation because my time is valuable.
Fabulous. Yeah.
I think there's things that you learn as you go, but time, money, energy.
Those are great. Those are absolutely great ones, because we all know where we are. We don't, again, we're not aiming for perfection. It's just wherever we are, how can we improve it? Is there anything that is actually a difficult point and an energy drain, if you like? So yeah, totally. Thank you so much for sharing that.
That's
Really helpful. And last but not least, please tell everybody how they can find you, where they can connect with you, and if you have a free gift to share. So please tell us more about that as well.
So probably best my website. So it's gennylyon.love. I'm very good at helping people with like working through their trauma, programming and things like keeps them stuck. So that would be the reason that they might want to check something out. I have a few freebies, but I think maybe the podcast is a good place to go. So visionary new athlete is. The people that go to the website, they will be able to access something called Activate Your Soul Business Bundle. And that's a free, like there is an energy clearing in there.
Right, okay.
It clears the mind.
Oh.
And then there is a couple of other resources. So
Fantastic.
they could go and get that if they wanted to, have that.
Sounds amazing. What I'll do is I'll pop your website link in, is probably above this video.
It's literally on the website there. They can get that.
That's fine. You'll have all the links. So thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest, Gennye. This has been a great topic and so important for mums to, again, just give themselves that, yes, I am committed to myself, to my own health and well-being. And what you've shared today is no doubt going to be super helpful for those.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.